Great. Hello, people. We're coming from 4 time zones this week. We've got I'm in the UK, Arran at the end is in Australia, then Scott in USA, and Glyn is joining us from New Zealand.
Welcome.
Good morning.
If you don't mind, before we kick off, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping for anyone that's new to watching this. We do this weekly. We're part of the Guitar Builders Collective. You just saw the sting at the beginning, and there'll be links in the video description to how you can find out more about the collective, which is basically a group of people who all build guitars or are interested in building guitars at all different levels of experience, and we just like to share and support each other. And we've got our live chat. So live chat happens whilst this is streaming. If you're watching in the future, please just join in the comments. I've just seen in the live chat regular drop in from Ty Shot the Fox to check the beards. I was going to say that we're 1 beard down with Glyn and half a beard down with Scott.
And I had a haircut today, so the shave went as well. And maybe it was just to make our Glyn feel welcome as well, so we don't just have bearded guests on.
Oh. There are a few months it just has to happen. I just and then I immediately throw it back. Sorry.
You see, I'm not actually making guitars these days, so of course you don't need a beard, do you?
Glyn, that might be a great way into starting our conversation, because obviously you'll hear Glyn from Mr. Glyn's Pickups. We've mentioned you a few times recently because Aaron's just used some of your pickups in his newest guitar. And one thing we want to talk about is obviously pickups and wiring. We've mentioned a few times in the last few podcasts, I think, that one of the things a lot of people focus on is the woods and the way they're building and the processes, but maybe the wiring and the pickups are sort of slightly secondary, or we just pick a brand we know and we don't really think it through as much. Aaron was telling me he did a lot of research before buying yours as well. So we obviously want to get into pickups, but also when we spoke before, you and me, you were telling me about your background in guitar building. So how long have you been involved with guitar?
Well, I started playing when I was 16, and I'm 57 now, so that's ages ago. And then I mucked about with guitars, took them apart like everybody here probably did. And then in my mid-20s, I went to college in the UK to study guitar making and repair full-time. So I did that for a bit, and then left college, had a couple of jobs, worked for JHS for a while, John Hornby Skews, just getting new guitars out of boxes and making them play and putting them back, and off they went to their new homes. Then bought a guitar shop, went back to college to teach guitar making and guitar repair for a couple of years.
Was that still in the UK?
That was in Leeds, in the north of England, in Yorkshire. So I was there for about 10 years doing guitars. Then I moved to New Zealand, opened a guitar repair workshop in central Auckland, and did that till 3 years ago. And I'd been always, throughout the whole of that, I'd been making and repairing pickups. And then 3 years ago, I decided to do that full time and work from home, which is where I am now. And there you go. That's a really, really brief summary of me. So, and I think the thing with repair is that you have to deal with whatever somebody brings into you. So it's not, so you don't get to choose. Like if you're just making, you get to choose what you're doing. But if if I might be really, really into tellies, but somebody brings me an SG and I've got to do that. So there you go.
We talked about something like that, I think last week, just mentioning the fact that I feel like people that did a lot of repair in their background before they started building had a real advantage when it came to building, but I might be wrong. But every time I hear a story like that, it kind of makes me regret that I didn't have that trial by fire.
I feel the same with people that have worked in guitar shops and just played lots of guitar.
Yeah, that too.
Know the differences. Like we all may know what the feeling is of a guitar neck because we've built different shapes. But if you've played loads, you've got that wider experience you can pull on.
Yeah.
Depends on the shop. People in shops tend to know their stock. So if they don't, you know, unless it's a second-hand shop. I mean, second-hand shops, that's great because you get all that old stuff. But I think with repair, because you see all the ways of doing things, and you get quite curious about it, and you know, you see all the different truss rods that people use, and you end up figuring out what works for you. Whereas if you're making, you'll tend to do you'll do it. You'll put a truss rod in, it works, great. I'm going to stick with that kind of truss rod forever because it works. You know?
Yeah, whatever you can get hold of that's financially in your budget is your starting point, and that might be your end point as well in that case.
Yeah, and it's a big risk trying stuff out, trying pickups out. Whereas as a repairer, people bring you all the goodies, and you get to play with it all.
So I always think some of those things too, that, you know, like with a truss rod, you kind of commit to the truss rod that you use when you put that in the guitar first. It's not like the electronics or pickups that you can kind of change and swap over. You kind of, once you glue that truss rod in, you're not going to think, oh, maybe I'll just try this other truss rod in the guitar. So, I think there's a lot of components that you can experiment and have a lot of fun with, and then sort of other things that, I think, as you said, once you try something and it works, it's like, yep, that's what I'm going to stick with until someone suggests an alternative.
Yeah, I can't tell you with truss rods, don't get them on clearance on eBay. Can't tell you that.
Yeah,
but there's no reason why I can't just make one. You know, I really like the Gibson style straight truss rod, one way truss rods. I just like the feel of that and the way you can adjust them to be quite sensitive, and that's just 3/16 round bar with a thread at each end. It's very easy just to make yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. There are certain things that, as a player, you're sort of scared of if you don't know what you're doing. Truss rod, when you find out about it, you think, oh, I might break that. And then when it comes to making things, I always thought, oh, truss rods must be this complex thing when I first got into guitar making with really tight tolerances and things, but not really.
Nowhere near. And if you have it, I mean, I like to make a straight rod parallel to the back of the neck. So there you go. And that's and you obviously don't want it too tight or it can't do anything, but you can't make it too loose or it's going to rattle around and that causes its own problems. If you're going to have a non-adjustable, a one-way rod, then you do need to build a bit of relief into the neck, but that's easy enough. So yeah, that's my thought anyway. It's not, and also I think the whole truss rod thing there is this myth that's been perpetuated since before the internet, since it was all magazines, where you can adjust it quarter of a turn and then leave it a fortnight, and that's don't do any more than that. But I mean, if that was the case, how can you take your guitar to a repairer and get it back a week later?
Yeah, there's so many things that exist in the ether that people believe, from tone woods and to things like that, about how you finish. I've seen odd conversations about what oils to use on your necks and fingerboards and things as well. Do you mind if we just take a step back? Because I realised when you were talking, there's something we've never really talked about, which is this idea of going to college to learn about lutherie and guitar. So when you went, first of all, not when you were teaching, but when you first went, were there many options of places to go? Do you remember? Were there lots of schools doing it?
In the UK, there were 4, because there was one in Edinburgh, there was the College of Furniture in London, there was one around sort of Nottingham way, and then there was this one which was part of the Leeds College of Music, but it's not there anymore, the Leeds one anyway. And which is this was in the 90s, right? And what happened was, when I was a student, there was a violin making, there was I think it was violin and acoustic guitar. There was electric guitar making, which is what I did. There was piano tuning, and there was brass and woodwind. And they gradually got whittled down, and in the end, we were the last standing, and we were replaced by DJ workshops, so people learning to DJ. So this is the 90s. So that suddenly it was like that. It got, raves were a thing, and it all exploded that. And then they realized in where I could teach 10 people, they could get 30 or 40 of them. So it's bums on seats, and then we were kicked out, and that was that.
Yeah, interesting. Because I went to the Sir John Cass School in London, which was part of the London Met, and it was a furniture making and instrument making school. I only went there for a short course, or a couple of short courses in wood finishing and guitar making and things, but they were slowly downsizing as well. So they had piano repair workshops upstairs, they had floors that made as well woodwind instruments, and all of that had basically been phased out because this college, the London Met, was in so much debt that this building they owned in the East End of London was worth so much money, it was financially better for them to sell the building and downsize the courses. And a lot of those courses you couldn't transfer to a new building because the cost of the startup of moving all the equipment, like they had air compressors built into the roof that just fed down to the different floors where the painting booths were. And the cost of moving all that or setting up again was prohibitive. I can't say that word. So yeah, that disappeared. And again, it was just costs for the college.
Mm.
Do you know, are there any places in America or Australia that you're aware of?
I know that's something that I've, the last few years kind of looked into just out of interest. There's in Melbourne, so I'm at a suburb of the Geelong area, so I'm about an hour and a half from Melbourne. So in Melbourne, there's universities or TAFEs that do run like a lutherie sort of course for 18 months or so. But that's the only sort of one that I've, like formal course or school that I've seen. And I suspect for where I am, so Maton Guitars and Cole Clark Guitars, who are primarily acoustic guitar builders, so they're based in Melbourne. And I think, just from finding out as much as I can, that it's sort of working for those kind of people as an apprenticeship and sort of working your way through is where a lot of people sort of get work. And I know that the course that is run through the TAFE and the uni, then those students have placements at Cole Clark and Maton Guitars as sort of part of those sort of courses. So I know, so in Victoria, that's the only sort of one that I'm aware of. I'm not sure in the other states if they would have sort of something similar, but yeah, it's certainly not that I've been able to find easily that the kind of options that, you would, a young person would leave school and then go into a uni course or a course where they're going to be a guitar builder. I don't think that's sort of a viable option. It's sort of, more coming to it from other places.
Yeah, Corey just mentioned a few in the chat that he knows of in Australia.
Yeah, so Fletcher's. So I think we've talked about him before as one of the early YouTube builders. So I think they're the ones that I've seen. So I know I've when we've talked about building acoustic guitars and those kind of things, that's something that I don't think I would want to tackle trying to teach myself how to do it as I have with electric guitars. But I do know that there are a lot of acoustic guitar builders, around Melbourne and other places that you can do a 2-week course with them, and they've maybe been to the schools or work for Maton or someone, and they, you basically build your guitar with them. So that's sort of something that, in my retirement or at some stage down the track when I can cut back from work a bit, that's something I'd sort of love to do.
I guess that model of a guitar shop or company running short courses like over a couple of weeks is becoming a bit more popular as a way of hobby builders getting into it, or people making a one-off, and obviously to help support some of those companies.
There's got to be places in the States, but they're they're probably in big cities because I've never been anywhere near one. I remember fairly early on, there's a guy that in town that ran a little shop, a Gibson shop, and he did guitar lessons too. And I went to him and I was like, "Can you just give me a lesson on setup, and I'll pay you like a guitar lesson." It was a fun time. He was a pretty good guy. But like things, it's hard to actually find some formal training for me, you know.
Yeah, I think for me it's that other luthiers that are trained sort of running these things rather than I don't know, apart from this one course that I found, I don't think there's sort of opportunities to have a qualification in lutherie or guitar making that you can put your diploma on the wall and say, yes, I'm officially certified, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and really you can be officially certified, but I mean, what's the point in that? I mean, on its own, it doesn't. As it happened for me, it turned out to be useful because it was a qualification I had when I came to New Zealand to actually help with immigration. Not that there were any jobs here, but so that was the only difference it ever made. And that's quite an unusual circumstance. But I think.
I was going to say that I do know that a lot of the music colleges now, where you can go to do music production or guitar playing, there's quite a few of those that exist in London. And from what I know from friends that have done those courses, kind of guitar maintenance and setup and understanding how the guitar works is quite integral to the early stages of the courses. So it's not just the theory of playing, it's understanding the instrument, which I find interesting.
That is interesting.
Good. And I think some things you don't necessarily need anyone to teach you, because with a few basic tools and a bit of information, most jobs are actually reasonably easy. Where some things does, like fretting, takes practice, and it helps if there's someone to help you along with that. And I think setups as well. It's just a setup. Oh, crikey. if there was any job that I would worry about more than anything else, it was the setup. Because it's not the guitar world. It's not like the violin world where they all do what they're told, because that's how it's been for 300 years. You have to put up with it, I mean, what a devilishly uncomfortable instrument the violin must be. And they will set that up how it should be, and that's how you should put up with it. Whereas guitar, everybody has a different take on it, and that it buzzes when I try to make it buzz thing, It's like, oh, crikey. They can be professionals are so easy to work for. Whereas it's the beginners can be very hard work, and they have a really high expectation.
But,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and the idea that I spent $10,000 on this instrument, therefore the laws of physics should be slightly different for me. It's really and that can be a battle. But I mean, on the whole, people are fantastic. But every now and again, it's that expectation thing. Yeah.
Well, the electronics thing is the one place where there's real crossover from, if you had actual knowledge outside of guitar building, that would directly translate into helping you out with that. And, for garage hobbyists like me with no background in electricery, you're just stabbing in the dark trying to find your way. Scott, I wouldn't go down the route of veering away from the guitar world, because there's stuff if you were really, really into it, this would be a pedal making group, right? We would. So you're never going to get madly into capacitance and all that stuff. So you need to find out. You know what you need to know. It's a simple circuit. Like capacitors, there's only one thing you need to know about a capacitor, and that is it lets treble through.
And that's all you need to know. All the other stuff you can look online, and because they're brilliantly fascinating things. But that's all you need to know.
Interesting.
It lets treble through, and then you can decide where that treble goes. The value of the capacitor tells you which treble frequencies. That's it.
Interesting. Well, I just figured if you had a background in electronics and you knew that whole world, and you played with breadboards and all that crap, then when you came to guitar building, you would really have an advantage in that. I just assumed.
Yeah, if you want to go for active circuits, but in our mainly passive world, it doesn't. I wouldn't worry about it. It's more akin to plumbing than that.
That's a great analogy.
I've seen those little analogies and diagrams before of hoses and water and how much is being let through and how much is being squeezed and all those kind of things. So yeah, those have made sense to me when I've seen it.
I've just been working. I've been working for a very long time on this ridiculous guitar, which has got lots of things in it that the client wanted. So it's got treble boost. I think I mentioned it to you all before. It's got a treble boost. It's got a piezo with its preamp. It did have 2 kill switches that change colours with LEDs on it depending on which pickup position you're in, and it had a treble bleed. It had some other controls that changed the tone, and it was all well and good, but that analogy of plumbing, of how to just get it all to fit into the space, was the main problem. And then realising that certain things just aren't compatible with each other because whoever's designed this circuit thinks you're dropping it in a guitar that's like a normal guitar, not a guitar that's got this other circuit in it. And suddenly the pipes don't link, and I've got spare pipes going in different directions, and it's been a nightmare. So we had to gut some of it. Some of it just wouldn't work together. So just quickly, Glyn, because I do want to get onto the pickups side of it all, and I came across you. I can't remember if it was your Instagram or your YouTube channel, but it was because of your videos that I came across you, your kind of educational stuff. I just wanted to step back to when you got into the teaching side. Was there something that drew you into teaching, and are there things that you enjoyed about teaching, and where did your students go off to? Did they go off to become builders?
Yeah, I mean, really, I did it because I was Ted asked me to, and Ted had been my tutor, and he was. I mean, Ted unfortunately died. When did he die? 18 months ago. But he'd started repairing guitars in 1958, so he had seen everything.
Wow.
And met everyone, and he was quite an amazing character. So he said, "Do you want to come back and do that?" And I went, "Yeah." So it wasn't a plan. So what was the other question? Sorry.
Because obviously, if you did teaching then, and I find your video clips are very educational. So there must have been something about the teaching that you enjoyed, or maybe you're quite natural at. And I wondered, what drew you there? But clearly,
I don't know. Maybe. Well, thank you, thank you for liking them. I don't know. There was no training then with the teaching. You just go ahead and tell them stuff. So and the students were great. You're only talking to 10 people, and they want to be there. So. So you can't go wrong. As long as they want to be there, then you're sweet. And most of them went on to sell insurance and do completely different things. But some of them did fantastically well. This Tim Stark went off and works for Manson Guitars now and makes guitars for Matt Bellamy, which is rather lovely. So I mean, that's all his doing, really, not mine. I just didn't stuff it up for him. I think that's all I did. But so it's a really interesting way of clarifying stuff in your own head, having to explain it to somebody else, because you do have to get it. It does have to be organized, and people will ask great questions. So and you have to be able to answer that, or at least go, oh, let's discuss that, because I'm not sure myself. And you can learn heaps from people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, having to teach something is the best way to make sure you know it.
Yeah, although really they don't know it, so you could make it up, I suppose. But
yeah.
I shouldn't have said that, should I? Nah.
I had a teacher like that at school, and a classmate who, at the end of lessons, always used to go up and challenge him. I was just thinking, why are you challenging our physics teacher? Surely he knows better than us. Anyway, it turned out he didn't, and that student went on to sort of study much further and much more advanced things than we were being taught. But I never assumed our teachers didn't know things.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the problem with, I was going to say how things have changed with teaching in a school and learning things now through the internet. But then one of the things that drives me mad a lot is seeing people commenting in forums on Facebook advice on how to fix the problem someone's got when you know the information they're giving is totally wrong or isn't going to help. And there's nothing you can do to stop that.
But what you find is often the professionals are too busy doing what they do to be sitting there on forums all day. So I don't know.
Well, that brings us full circle to what I've always said. In every other part of the world, you know, those who can't teach. In the guitar world, those who can't build.
Although I know you say that, but I like to think that I can't build or play. But I like to think that when I try playing, it makes me realise that I prefer trying to build. I much prefer that element than the playing.
I actually have different, you know, enjoyment of each, but it's just it's really striking that there's so many builders that don't play.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just drawn to the guitar, and you know they just playing just doesn't really take off for them, and this is another way to be involved, honestly.
And I think I've said this before, if I had to choose between building or playing and could only choose one forever, not the other, it would be playing 100% of the time. As much as I love the building, but you know, the playing and the end result and the high that you get from being on stage and having, you know, playing guitars now that I've built and doing that on stage, it just kind of, it's an amazing feeling because you forget that you're playing an instrument that you've made yourself, and Glyn, you're probably the same with with pickups that you've made yourself. You kind of forget, and then after the show or later on, you think, "Oh man, that was awesome," and then you kind of stop and think, "Oh, I actually made that," and that's a pretty special feeling.
And that's a very different situation for making gear for than somebody at home or in studio or what have you, because it's when you're loud, it certainly emphasizes what that instrument does, doesn't it? You know, like if you've got a light, lively instrument, it's gonna feed back a bit, or it's gonna react better once you get up there to drummer volume. So I think, I think actually going out and gigging, I mean, I do pretty regularly, and I think that's a really useful part of developing new stuff. Yeah.
Brad's just said in the comment when my next live gig, and it's actually this Sunday, and I'll be using the latest build with your pickups in it this Sunday. So, I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, is that like a pub gig?
Yes. I'm in a group in Geelong. We put on shows every 3 or 4 months for fundraising for mental health research, but it's basically theme shows. So this one's Goddesses of Rock. Last one was like Foo Fighters. So they're theme shows, and there's generally like 20, 25 people that play on them, and you'll kind of put your name down for a song, and you know the organisers put it all together. And so I've had 5 songs allocated. So we normally have a rehearsal a couple of weeks before. So that was the other weekend, and you basically get at the rehearsal 15 minutes per song. You need to have learnt it and know it, because in 2 weeks' time, the next time you're playing, it's on stage sort of live. So really good. Local pub in Geelong, nice and loud, great bunch of musos. So it's great fun, and it sort of gives me a focus every 3 or 4 months that there's a bunch of songs that I've got to learn and play. So I've been putting this guitar through its paces the last few days just to make sure it's suitable, and it's amazing.
Good. Oh, that sounds like a really interesting thing. And you don't get to choose what you're gonna play either, do you?
So yeah, there's probably like a core group of 5 or 6 people, and they're the ones that choose the themes, and pretty much then they choose like the playlist and the set list. And it pretty much goes out, look, here's all the songs. Give me your top 3 preferences. What would you like to play on and what instrument? You send that off. They put the spreadsheet together and work out the best fit. And then, here's the gaps. Nominate for next round of songs. So basically, you sort of pick the ones that you want to do. And then, if it fits sort of the bill, then you kind of get those spots. So, it's really, really enjoyable. And it's, the themes and the bands vary. So, I'm I've been involved for maybe 4 or 5 years. So, I'm playing songs that I would never have imagined I would ever play live, in a cover band or something, just because they're these theme songs that, just really fun to do.
Cool. It's good, those challenges too. It's like I said with repair, you don't necessarily choose that. I mean, I play in a covers band, and so, you got to play what people are going to dance to. So it's not like I don't get to choose my stuff. So you have to play stuff by all kinds of different players. Yep. If you decide, we're rock based, so we'll do like 80s and 90s rock stuff. Yep. And there's some great challenging stuff from the 80s. For everyone, guitarists were a bit more flash back then in mainstream stuff.
One thing I loved about cover bands was taking, because whenever I've been in a cover band, it's been with people that are from a sort of rock background, but often taking things like 80s pop songs and covering them, but having that bit of more of a rock slant to it. And that's so much fun having that opportunity. Yeah. So, Glyn, let's transition towards Mr. Glyn's pickups. You said you've been building pickups throughout, but it's been 3 years or so that you've been doing that exclusively. Did Mr. Glyn's pickups exist as a brand before those 3 years?
No, it didn't. Now, I'd been right from when I was in college. I started winding pickups because there was a winding machine in the cupboard that we weren't using. It wasn't part of the course, but I nagged Ted to show me all about it, and I really liked it. It's really, really good fun. So I went home and I made like one of the sewing machine type winder and bought some wire and filled the bin full of useless wire that, to try and learn how to do it. See, this is in the 90s, so the internet didn't exist in any form that was any use to man or beast. So there was no information. Now it's really easy to look it up and go, oh, well, that's what a fender is. But there wasn't that information then. But what there was a lot of dead pickups in the world. So, and I had a little guitar shop, so I knew lots of people, and I could get people to bring me dead pickups. But what you're looking at really are 60s and 70s Strat pickups, a lot of those, and Gibson pickups and stuff, because they didn't have value then. It's when an instrument or a piece of kit is between sort of 15 and 20 years old, it's at its lowest value. That's when guitars get modified, is when they're 15, 20 years old. So, all those guitars in the 80s that got the brass nuts and stuff put on them, they were, and you go, oh, how could you do that to a early 70s Strat? Well, it was just an old guitar then.
All these 62 Strats that are heavily modified and changed.
But
people would give anything to have one now.
It happened when they were between 15 and 20 years old. So, so those pickups were around. So there's heaps of stuff to reverse engineer and to play with. But also that learning how to put wire on, which is the other thing that's kind of harder to say. It's not like a number, So I did lots and lots of that, and then repairing and rewinding them and selling them as something else, So I've been doing that a long time, and then I decided to get into the pickup making full time. I decided to do it in 2012, but didn't have the nerve to jump, to stop repairing, which was my livelihood. Then when COVID happened, so okay, there you go. I'll do that now. So and it was all in place. I had this range of pickups in place, and I'd been planning to do it, and then a virus did it for me.
There you go. Talking about modding classics just reminded me of a comic book collection I had when I was a kid that I didn't know was, going to be something. Me and my brother wound up putting them in 3-ring binders and ruined them.
If we could all see the future.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you don't know, and I don't know what. It's hard to look at guitars now and say what will be the thing. I mean, I've been looking at like Ibanez Roadsters. Probably for 20 years I've been saying Ibanez Roadsters, I should buy them all up because they're going to be worth something, and they still haven't. So
yeah, everything in the past that I've collected, specifically thinking that they were going to gain value, they haven't.
Yeah,
not yet.
Yeah,
I don't know that you can plan for those. You just those are happy little accidents that you stumble into sometimes, or at least other people do, not me.
Yeah, I definitely don't have that collector's mindset of buying something thinking ahead of what might happen to it in the future. But guitars are definitely a collector's thing. And what I find interesting about the internet is seeing people's collections and what drives their collections. And the other day, I saw someone who had 20 almost identical guitars. They were I can't remember what model it was. It was an SG type model, but they were all the same kind of redwood finish, but they were just slight variations of the same guitar from slightly different periods. And that was his thing, wanted to collect them all. And it just seemed a bit bizarre to me, but that's what he likes. So Glyn, I can see in the background a 3D printer. Is that partly how you make your pickups then? Bobbins?
No, that's new. I've had that 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, that was a swapsy for some pickups with Tony from Pepper's Pedals. I don't know if you know him, but so we did that. So no, that's just that, and it's probably visible and out and visible because I've been playing with it a lot. So yeah, it hasn't. I mean, really, it's for making jigs and guides and stuff. I'm not going to be. It's too pixelated for doing bobbins, I think. Right. I've got a laser cutter as well. I'm going to be using for maybe making my own flat work for Fender type pickups. So that means I'll be able to have a bit more scope for making unusual things. But that's a difficult one when someone says, "Oh, hey, could you make me a 9-string pickup that does this, that, the other?" The difficulty is, I'm really I prototype a lot, and I wind something and I play it and I gig it and then I give it. And if it's not quite my world, I give it to somebody else as like a test pilot player for them to use. So if somebody wants a one-off pickup, it's like, well, actually, could you pay me for 5, please? Because that's how many I'm going to be making. So I do try not to do that. I say no a lot more often than I say yes, just because of that. If it's going to leave here, it's got to be right.
It's so interesting you say that because I was looking back on our podcast we had with Mark. It was actually the one at the start of the year when we had a few people on. And Mark Gutierrez was saying what a bad business model it was making one-off guitars, which is basically what I do. And I'm trying to move away from that. And it did get me thinking about that whole idea, like this one guitar that I'm doing with the crazy wiring that's been here for ages. It's just constantly changing. And I've definitely spent more time on it than making 5 guitars, 100%. And it's trying to get that balance right as someone that's doing something they love doing. I'm really happy to work with someone who wants to do something crazy, but not realizing that it's just a ridiculous amount of work that's taking up time, and how to really get the business straight so that it can afford to exist. Making the one-off, saying no, it's interesting you can say no, because that must be a hard thing to do sometimes. Yeah,
it can. But it's difficult for guitar makers as well, because to do the one-off bespoke guitars, that involves so much quoting, doesn't it? Because people are going to get to say, what if I had this bridge or that bridge, and this pickup, these pickups and those pickups? Can you just give me a quote for that? And you spend hours and hours and hours and hours mucking about, and then they'll go and buy a Gibson, you know. So, but I talk to guitar makers, yeah, because I do supply a few smaller guitar makers, and I've kind of come to the conclusion the best model for that is because when you if you're full time, I mean, it's different if you've got a day job and you know that's different. But if you're trying to make a living, one-offs is why you start off, because you haven't got the investment to make a range of guitars. But obviously, if you do have a range of guitars, then you've got for the future. Then you can much more efficient, and you can be known for that, and hopefully, become PRS. Now, what I've sort of concluded is start with your bespoke one-off, but then to free up some time, change the attitude towards it. So if you're making one-off instruments, and then you go, right, I'm going to restrict it to 4 a year. Now you're telling everyone this on your social media. I'm making 4 guitars a year. If you order a guitar from me, I will discuss every aspect of it with you. I will take photographs throughout the build. I will communicate with you at every single point in the build. And at the end of it, I can produce this book for you with loads of photos and all that. And I'm going to charge an absolute premium price for that rare service because I only make 4 a year. Now, the fact is, that's how you do it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So just changing that expectation, so those 4 guitars a year rather than the 10 you were making, you will make the same money on those 4, freeing up some time to be working on the new design and that range. And I think that's sort of that, because that's a stepping stone. Because the stepping stone from one-offs, which take up all your time, or repairs, which take up even more of your time, onto a range and becoming like a small manufacturer. It's a hard step. That that's my suggestion.
Sort of psychological marketing you're suggesting there, the way you said it. Well, that's what marketing is. But yeah, I've definitely this year, having spent last year trying, I'm giving up repair work because it is so varied, takes up so much time. Every now and then something would come in and I'd realise I need to learn something a bit different to what I've done, to do a bit of research, to do this slight repair, and suddenly I wasn't getting time to build the guitars I wanted to build, and I was resenting the repairing.
It's hard, and sometimes it's, can you just change this jack socket? Sweet. But the customer comes in, they spend 20 minutes talking to you at each end of the job, and which is nice. And it's nice talking guitars. That's what we're doing now. But then you've just changed a $5 part. What are you going to charge? So it's
I was just saying, I had an experience like our neighbours. Their daughter plays the guitar, and she had a performance with school, and that just stopped working. So it was just a loose wire. So they kind of came over and said, "Oh, look, can you have a quick look at this?" It's happened before, and we had to send it off to the shop, and they took like a week to get it back to us and all this kind of stuff. And it was one of the leads came off the jack socket, and literally. I soldered it on in 2 minutes, and I knocked on their door and said, "Here it is, it's fixed." And they kind of looked at me thinking, "Oh, we sent this to a shop for like a week to get this fixed last time." Yeah. So I can see how when that's your business, and those kind of jobs come up. How do you charge for that, and how do you do it?
See, and I'd always have one freebie a week. So school or whatever comes in with that. And I would think, right, you're my free one this week, and I would go, there you go, tell all your mates, all your mates, or you owe me a coffee or whatever,
Yes, yep.
And that makes you feel better and less resentful about them. But it's hard. It's hard, and repairing. I got too busy when I was repairing instruments. So, and what happens is. instruments come in, and you need to have as many going out as come in, but they were coming in at such a rate, they were coming in quick and going out. So it was slowly getting, and I should have said no more often. And I kept taking fake holidays. I kept saying to people, I can admit this now, people of Auckland. When I said I was going on holiday all the time, it was just that I was getting into the workshop with the door closed, just to try and get rid of the backlog. So it got too busy with repairing.
So is your pickup where you're making the pickups? Is that on the site that you had your repair shop?
No, that was because I live in a place called Muriwai Beach, so which is actually the end of the world. In a remote island in the Pacific, and I'm at the end of it. So the sea's just behind me there, and so I'm a good 50 kilometres from Auckland, and that's where my workshop was. It was a really central workshop. So when that workshop when COVID happened, I got rid of the workshop immediately. And moved everything into here. So I actually got quite a lot of space at home. So so this is at home, and now I can just, I don't really need to leave the village ever, so I don't.
Can we go back to pickups again? Because at the start of the year, when we had our stream, when we had a few people on, and just quick heads up, anyone that's watching for the first time, in the description there's links to all the past streams. Curtis from Goth Rider Creations was saying he's just building himself a pickup winder, and I know Alan, you've got one you've built as well. But Curtis just put a question in the comments. It made me think about that process of when you start out pickup winding, which I think a lot of guitar makers may want to experiment in at some point. What's the best way to start? Is it literally starting with a single coil, or is there something? Is there a way to start, or is it just an experiment?
Get a notebook. Get yourself a notebook to start off with, because you're going to need to remember the experiments that you've done, because it's not, well, I suppose now you've got formulas you can follow. You can go, this is a Strat, therefore I will give it whatever 8,000 turns of AWG 42 or whatever. But write down what you do and what the result is. There's lots of test equipment you can get. Personally, I actually prefer to plug it in and have a listen. And I think that's where you need to be a player, and have different amplifiers. And I think the thing that's really easy to forget is how it feels, because different pickup. If you play a Strat with Fender noiseless and then you play one with proper single coils, it feels different. It reacts very, very differently. I would, because I'm only mentioning it because it's not the obvious one. But yeah, do that. Now, what else? I mean, more technically, if you're doing the hand thing, pay attention to the tension. I always, when doing that, will have a cloth in my hand, like a duster or something, just to stop the wire getting grippy in your fingers. And you need to look at this thing while it's moving back and forth. So I to stop getting tired, I have sunglasses with one lens popped out so I can see through it. It's my right eye. My right eye is my looking eye. No, my left eye, sorry. And the other one I blanked off, so you don't have to squint. Looking at it with one eye is better than looking at it with two eyes. So I just put some masking tape or something over that, and you just don't get as tired, which makes a massive difference.
I love that.
These are really simple things that you're probably not going to see with all the flash guys on YouTube.
That's a tip that you can only learn from experience, isn't it? Really, you're not going to see that in a how to build pickups book.
No, and really, because you look like a total numpty when you're doing it, so you're not going to, you're not going to see the guys doing that online. Yeah, so that helps, and really think about your traversing back and forth, because that makes a difference. You know, if you're winding one wire really nice and neat and tight next to the one before it, you will get a muffled sounding pickup. Because of a thing called leakage capacitance. So where the one bit of wire has some capacitance around it, and that will affect the one next to it, and the next to it, next to it. So you try to keep them separate. But then if you're trying to put lots of windings on, then obviously you make it like a lattice, takes up more space. But hey, that's what experiments are for.
Black magic.
Brad's got a question, which for a pickup builder may be like someone asking us how long it takes to build a guitar. But I also have no idea, how long does it take to wind something that's 8,000 winds? Is that like 10 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it? I've got no idea.
Know, winding it is probably less than half of the job. Because let's say we're talking a humbucker. You've got to put the whole thing together. And then there's wax potting as well, with whichever. I mean, I wax pot everything, but for different degrees. So if it would be a more vintage pickup, it'll be very brief. Whereas if something's going to be used for metal, then I'm going to, wax it a lot. So a lot of those things, the winding's probably about half of it, and I haven't actually timed it, to be honest. And I don't make up one pickup from beginning to end. So, I'll repeat a job at least 10 times or more. So I don't know.
Just on that, there was a question earlier from Curtis about when you have bar magnets, those 6 poles. Just is that more complicated to wind? I think he was just thinking of his first wind, maybe. Just having a one bar.
What wrapping around a bar
it's the same
like a lipstick?
Maybe means like a P90 rather than a single coil.
Oh, this is the question. Is it quicker to assemble a bar pickup rather than one with pole pieces? I'm assuming that it must be easier because it's one thing as opposed to lots of things. But I guess there's so many different elements that must make a pickup harder.
A bar pickup like a humbucker with a single bar magnet underneath.
Yeah.
The assembly's at the end, whereas with a Strat, the assembly's at the beginning with the flat work and the putting the magnets in. Unless you buy one pre-assembled with like a Fender type pickup, that's easy enough. And that's probably that's where I'd start. I start with Strats because they're pretty simple things, really.
In my very limited experience of pickup winding, so I've my little homemade machines up there. So I've done wound 3 P90s, 3 single coils for some of the builds over the past. So I did the P90s first because the bobbin's there and you can just wind it around, it's good to go. And then it was the Middle Earth guitar that I did the 3 single coils. So the flat work and the magnets and that sort of assembly of components rather than having it all sort of ready to go. So that was kind of my very limited experience and the order that I kind of did it. And to me, that sort of made sense from a complete beginner's point of view.
Okay. So what do you think of making a humbucker then, Aaron?
Haven't done that yet, and I will at one stage. So, when I sort of started researching it a couple of years ago, it was, that order of what's going to be the simplest one to do first.
Oh, we lost Arran.
Yeah, my only real question is, am I a moron for paying $100 a piece?
We're all back.
It wasn't just me that time. I thought I might have dropped out again.
When you rejoined, you kicked us all out.
So it wasn't my internet again. That happens most times, doesn't it?
We were just trying to find out if Scott was a moron or not.
That's already clear, but in this one particular instance is where
I think I was saying so I kind of I will do a humbucker one day, and I think it was just that when I think about all of the steps and what can go wrong at each step with wires breaking or, something interfering, and then all those previous steps are gone. There's a bit of noise. I don't know where that's coming from.
I think that's my pump.
Oh, that's okay.
Well,
yeah, that's right. I'm just making sure it wasn't anything I could do.
Water pump just kicked in, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's just about, I'm assuming with a humbucker when you're having to wind a couple of coils and then, soldering more wires and leads together, in my head, there's more chance of something going wrong, whereas doing a P90 and then a single coil, there's kind of less of those steps. So as a learning experience, in my mind, that was the best order to go, rather than, doing a humbucker first and then getting to that last stage and stuffing something up, and then all the stuff done beforehand had to be redone.
Okay.
Can I ask a question which is not related to making pickups? So as guitar builders, I think that sometimes we just buy pickups we think we've heard are good and use the wiring that we've heard is the right wiring for that set. Have you got any suggestions for how you should go about, maybe if you've got a customer you're building for, or maybe that's the best way to start. If you've got a customer and they say, we play this type of music and this is the sort of sound we're after, have you got a suggestion of how you go about deciding which pickups, how to wire it? Or is it just go to you as the manufacturer and see what's available?
Which pickup? That's a really, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I know Seymour Duncan have 1,200 pickups in their range.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start. So let's say. And I don't know how many color options. So let's say you've decided I want a Duncan blur, whatever. The chances of being able to find that in stock in a shop, and you've made all that decision. So I try and keep my range as simple as possible, and I try and curb my imagination for coming out with new stuff. So it's hard. It's really hard deciding on a pickup. Ask people, try as many things as possible. I don't know, listen to stuff.
As a consequence, I think that's one of the situations where, some of us who don't know what, don't really know much, why something first.
Hold on.
It circles back to my question of whether or not I'm a moron for paying $100 a piece for DiMarzios. I just stumbled into a couple DiMarzios that really sounded good in certain situations, and I just kind of I keep going there because found something that works.
Yeah, well, if you found something that works, it works. Brilliant. It's tricky though, because unless you try other stuff, then you're not going to learn stuff. But then again, it's $100 you're spending money on each time. So, don't know, borrow your mate's guitars, that sort of thing.
That links back to what you said earlier, doesn't it? About when you first building a guitar, you got your truss rod that works. You're going to use that truss rod every time. You are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, as someone who makes stuff, I'm kind of banking on people doing that with me as well. Once they take a chance on the little guy from New Zealand, and hopefully then you keep working with them.
See, so I found a setup I liked on a guitar I built recently with a combination of the pickups, the volume and tone pot values, and the setting I had on the treble bleed I put on. I thought this is all perfect. I'm going to stick to this every time I make a Strat type guitar. But now there's a different type of pickup I want to try. So I'm wondering if I should just try a few different things. And then I know that if someone comes to me and say, we want this sort of sound, I can say, that's that combo that I like. If we want this sort of sound, it's that combo. And I'm in the process of building a guitar where it's very open, so I can quickly swap out pots to just do that little test on, see which is the right. But my question back to you, sorry.
No, I said that you mentioned wiring as well, and I really think keeping it simple is by far the best way, especially if someone's going to go out and do gigs. because you see. I mean, I remember, I don't know how many times I've done the Jimmy Page wiring mod on a Les Paul, yeah. And you see the person later, a year or two later, and say, "Oh, do you use and they never use any of it. They just wanted it. They just use it as a. Les Paul is, as a standard guitar, is relatively complicated, having 2 volumes and 2 tones and that in the 3-way. Yeah. So I think there's enough for people to fiddle with right there, without But people, they read the internet and end up with wanting every single option. And I think, keeping it simple and if you're going to fit a tone, if you've got a customer, the question is, do you use a tone control? Yeah. Because the answer is often no.
Mm-hmm. The only time I've ever used a tone control for playing live is with my Strat on the bridge pickup. Just if you change to it and it's too trebly, just roll the tone back a little bit. That was kind of how I had it set. And that was often set, so I just have that bridge pickup tone just roll back a little bit, and I wouldn't touch it from there. So I've often thought about whether a tone control is worth putting in.
Well, on a Strat, that's a mod anyway. That's not a standard thing. You haven't got a tone control on a bridge pickup on a standard Strat. But yeah, that's a place. Strat bridge pickups are very underused because on the whole, they're quite obnoxious, really, aren't they? So I think just keeping it as simple and usable. And there's the other debate is, where do you put the volume control?
Yeah.
Because if you want to polarize players, I've done it. Put a post on Instagram saying, I think the Strat volume is in the perfect location. Yeah, which I actually do. But
well, when you see people using it, they use it well because it's there. They do things with it because it's there, and those things they do, they couldn't do if it wasn't in that position.
Yeah.
But then for other people, it's just in the way because they don't want to do those things.
Personally, I hit it accidentally all the time and wind up turning it down and have to stop and roll back up. But I've had issues with playing Strats for a long time. The middle pickup seems to be right where I pick, and apparently I pick deep. So,
Glyn, and this is to Glyn and Arran. Because Arran, you said you did a bit of research to decide which pickup.
I did, yep. Yeah.
Do you get people come to you and say, look, I know you're keeping it simple with your range, but they ask for advice. And how do you step someone through the advice for what pickups they're going to have?
I've got a little thing on the top there, which is how to buy, basically, how to choose.
Oh, yeah,
sorry. And it's just 2 questions. I ask 2 simple questions, and that's how and then you can start that. Because I don't want to give somebody a form to fill in, because I'm not the IRD. I just want, let's just, and often from that information you can help somebody along. And I'm quite happy to recommend somebody else's pickups. If somebody really, if what they want is a Duncan Hot Rails, and I'm quite happy to say that. So I basically ask me, because it's when you're the little guy, people can phone you up, and you can have a chat, and I've had that with customers. I had a customer last week who was in the US, and he was fitting for some of my pickups and just had a wiring question. So I can sit there and type for ages, or I can just phone him up. So we just had a quick call, and I can do that. Whereas, the big guys, if somebody answers the phone, they're probably not going to know anything. So, so that I try and, because I've got experience of playing and of dealing with a lot of players, it can be relatively straightforward sometimes.
That's great. Yeah, no, one thing I've always loved about working with smaller companies that make pickups is that ability to have that conversation. And I like on this page how you've described your pickups with a reference to players or a style of music, blues rock, Frusciante, and like early 60s. For a lot of people, that will help them audialize. What's the word? But for knowing what it's going to sound like. So Arran, how did you make your decision about what was going to go in your guitar?
Yes, look, so for me, I discovered Glyn through, I think it was through Instagram initially. So if I go back a step, so the last, however many builds I've wanted to use, I've used all Australian timbers. So initially it was like, I'll get like an Australian-made pickup as well. And then Glyn sort of came up on my radar and thought, New Zealand's close enough to Australia. I'll fit that into my little philosophical guitar build. And then talking to a few other people, other musos that I know around Geelong have used these pickups before. So basically for me, for this build, it's a live guitar. So, the gigs that I was explaining before, this is what this guitar's for. And my preference really is a Strat neck pickup. So that's the sound I love the most. So then I sort of got into watching the demo videos of the different single coil pickups. And kind of, found one and it's the Tui that I went with. And then actually emailed Glyn, which early, mid last year when I got them, because I basically only wanted the two pickups, a humbucker in the bridge. And, the humbucker in the bridge is just for the heavier rock distorted, power chordy stuff. And pretty much emailed and said, look, this is what I want for the neck. What's a good match for the bridge? Because I didn't want to change between two and there's like a big volume mismatch, or one's pushing the amp differently than the other, and all of a sudden you change pickups and it's like a different guitar. So so it was the integrity that I've got for the humbucker. So so that was sort of my choice for that. There was one that and the demos, whoever you have playing the demos, that was a pretty good selling point as well. So listening to that, I was sort of sold there, and it was that was my sort of choice. And Glyn was really good on the email to suggest what was a good humbucker match for it. And it's been a week since I've had them in, and I'm thrilled with them. It's exactly what I was after. I would have had this guitar finished months ago, but I was building this one at the same time as a commission build, so the commission one had to come first, and then the Great Guitar Build Off started, and I had that window of opportunity to build that, so mine had to go on the back burner again for that. So it's really good. I'm sort of playing around just with fine tuning pickup heights between the two to get a good balance. So that's sort of that was my experience of choosing these two.
So, hey, Arran, what you say balance? Are you looking for even volume in that?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of because I mean the gigs that I've been sort of doing that pretty much, because there might be 6 or 8 guitarists on the night, so you've got different guitarists provide their pedal boards and amps and backline, so you literally you kind of get to know who's got what and how it works. So literally you're kind of going on blind in a lot of ways. But that was the kind of idea that, playing single coil and humbucker guitars, that an amp or something might be set up for a humbucker and then a single coil kind of sounds really thin compared to it. So it's really that when I'm sort of going between the two pickups, one's not louder or softer than the other, or the tones different, one's muddier or brighter or trebler than the other one. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's because balance is an interesting one, because I know balance sounds like that's a lovely word. I want balance. Yeah, I want some of that. But actually, in a live situation, you quite often want to go to the bridge, and you are a man of rock, and go to the neck, and you're a lot quite in your. So you don't necessarily, although I do put effort into making my pickups sound even, because most people do want that, but it's actually not for everyone. It's an interesting one, and I think the wording is often really important with these things, where it steers what you think you want. But clearly you do, and you've thought about it.
I think that's
sorry, just to sort of finish that off. It's in my head, it's that I can sort of play one song on the neck pickup, and then the next song I change to the humbucker, and I don't have to adjust, the volume on the pedals or use different pedals or the amp or whatever, or the balance with the other guitarist in the band. It's a clean distinction. Whereas, if I had a Strat and I played that on one song and then picked up a Les Paul, and then I might have to adjust things. So that's kind of the idea. Or in past when I've been in other bands and I've had like a Strat and then like a 335 sort of style guitar, and I thought I'd have an EQ pedal set up on the board, and that was just for one of those guitars, so that I could put the EQ pedal on just to to negate any of those differences between two different guitars. So I think I was in my head, it's kind of like, all right, two different pickups, I kind of don't want to have to worry about any of those kind of differences.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to think about which position you're going to be in, which pickup you're using for what part of the song, or what type of song you're playing, and how the volume might differ. But am I right, Glyn, that if you're playing through an amp at home and you think you've balanced your two pickups, they sound the same to you, the same loudness as each other, if you change to a massive different amp, potentially the slight differences in the sounds might be exaggerated more on stage, for example. So is it like when you set up, do you want to be setting up with the rig you're going to be playing on? Or is that really?
Ideally, yeah, because then there's, but I mean, I assume you'd be practicing, take a screwdriver to band practice and have a little height adjustment if you feel you need to. The other thing is, as soon as a drummer starts, life is very different. With all that swishy stuff going on with cymbals and you can't quite hear much. And actually, I think the other thing is, I keep referring back to sort of psychological things here, but if you feel your sound is good, then you're going to play way better.
Yeah.
Something I don't think about real often is sitting at home playing by yourself. Your tone needs to be, you're going to want it a certain way. When you're playing with other people, it usually needs to be different. Yeah.
Get rid of the bass. If you're going to play with other people, get rid of the bass.
Yeah.
Bass on your tone, not on your guitar, but if you got two guitarists, if they can just turn the bass, if you can both turn the bass down on your amps, suddenly bass guitar comes forward, everything comes forward. You got to find your little bit, because we're not at home or recording where you might want a full range. It's very different. You don't. It's just really impolite to have a full frequency range live, I think.
That's why I'm building this complicated guitar for. He actually plays solo. He does lots of Twitch streaming where it's him playing. So all those nuances of sound might be heard by his audience, but then that sort of depends if they're listening on their phone or whatever. They're not going to hear all of the things. But for him, I guess it's more important than if you're playing live. I remember when I used to play bass, I used to have a rig with lots of subtle sound changes, a bit of chorus here and a bit of stuff like that. And then the more I played live, the more I realised, and I just started plugging into the PA, and I just used my tone control on my bass every now and then for the song. That was it. Got rid of everything else.
Yeah, subtle doesn't work. I mean, really, the audiences I'm playing to, they're all drunk anyway. The finer points that I've worked on, and I go, oh well. But as long as I'm happy, I don't have to really be happy with anything else. Only my part. If I'm happy with my part, then cool, that's great. I'll have a nice time then.
But I think I always say the guitar you play, what it looks like affects the way you play. If you're playing a spiky guitar, you can play more heavy. If you're playing a guitar which is beautiful, you're going to feel like it's a precious thing that you're playing. And I'm sure, like someone just said, I can't remember who it was, the tone you have at home, if it sounds good, you're gonna be enjoying playing more. Yeah,
I'm gigging with a flying V at the moment.
Is that a new thing? Are you normally a telly guy, or are you normally?
My heart is definitely with the Telecaster in, and if I wasn't playing rock sort of stuff, then then I'd be playing a telly. Although I've gigged with a telly, I'll take whatever I fancy out. Quite often it's prototype pickups in there, and I'll give pickups a good. Like most of last year, I gigged with a set of humbuckers that I'm still not quite happy with, so that they're still not on the site. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I started building, I thought I was a humbucker guy, and the more I go along, the more I really appreciate single coil. It's got a more vibrant and clean and pretty tone.
And the feel, like I mentioned earlier, that feel it's great with single coils.
Yeah.
Can I do?
Hey, I saw.
Oh, sorry. I was going to do some quick fire questions from the comments.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Glyn. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was actually going to refer to the comments that somebody talked about shielding.
Ah, right. Well, we go down. I've got a sort of order. I'll go back a bit.
I might have a related question to shielding as well.
I'm just gonna throw up some comments, and we can have one word answer if you want. Am I a Philistine for thinking, as a grunge heavy metal fan, having cheap, simple pickups is better, because you don't need a crisp tone?
Whatever you like.
Yeah, that's the right answer. I love it.
Yeah. If it sounds good, then it's good. Yeah. Cool.
I noticed someone else in the comments said if you've got a clean tone, then you can do what you want with it. But if you've got a dirty tone, it's harder to clean it up. Maybe. But again,
yeah. I mean, you can't add clarity. There's no clarity pedal you can get to step on. But I mean, I think I go for clarity with everything, even the really powerful pickups have clarity, because you can get rid of it easy enough if you don't like it. Yeah. But yeah, and also there's a perception of you being louder in a live situation if you are clearer. You don't get lost in the swamp as much.
That makes sense.
If we want to get into pickup winding, is there a place you recommend to buy parts from? Like, we all know the StewMac for our guitar tool.
It depends where you are, because being in New Zealand, delivery costs are always a big deal, because a lot of stuff has to come from overseas. I get stuff. I either get like all my magnets I have made for me, and so there's stuff that you're not going to do for a small amount. Axes R Us in the UK are pretty good. They've got a huge range of stuff. Mojo Tone in the US. There's nobody here, but yeah.
Mojo Tone is in the pickup makers. They also sell parts.
No, maybe they just call Mojo.
Actually, maybe
Different
it's
people.
Mojo Pickups, and Mojo Tone must be something different.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So they've got a pretty good range of stuff. Yeah.
So what about shielding then? Cavity shielding.
Yeah, shielding's brilliant. Do it. You know, people will go on about P90s being really noisy and stuff. Shield cavities, all good. I use copper foil. The big thing that I see people not doing is soldering the copper foil to itself. Even if you get the stuff with a conductive back, two things can happen. One is that they don't necessarily adhere that well, but then the other thing is that the corners can peel away. And if a corner peels away and touches something that should be positive, then it's signal over. But if you can spot weld each little bit with a bit of solder, and it solders like a dream, copper tape does, then you can spot weld all the corners in, and you can make sure it's all electrically conductive. Now, copper foil is expensive for what it is. Don't use aluminium because you can't solder to it. But I found out not that long ago that slug tape, I think it's called.
That's what I use.
Yeah. So you can buy like 2-inch tape, because apparently it will keep, if you put copper tape around something like a plant pot, it will keep slugs and snails out, and it doesn't work.
No.
Because my daughter, when she was 7, got really into slugs and snails and had a plant pot full of them, and we were trying to keep them in, and we tried copper tape, and we tried tinsel, and we tried. There's no way. These they are all little Bruce Willises. You can't, they will get over anything.
They get over broken glass as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I use
and even if you a moat, right?
Yeah.
We put a moat in that was I don't know, 200 mil. They can survive in water for about 4 days, by which time they've got to the other end. so really, but the tape is really good for shielding, and it's really cheap if you buy it for that application. If you buy it for guitars, it's 10 times the price.
So you can still solder that tape. Fine.
Solder it, yes.
Yeah.
So you got to put your strips in, and it does take a while, and it does break sometimes. And you have a little tool for butting it down, but then solder every bit to every other bit, and then solder an earth wire to that, and that can go to the back of your pots, because you're basically encasing everything in a metal box, and then you earth that box, and it does make a difference. So you can go out and gig with single coils, and it's not, they're not that noisy then. And the noise is interesting because older people like me care less about noise than younger folk do, because I've grown up with, horrible hissy equipment, whereas now people are very used to things sounding really good. But yeah, anyway, slug tape.
Do you have an opinion on shielding paint?
I haven't used it, but so I couldn't, and I haven't ever done a proper experiment A/Bing it. So my instinct is it's not as good. But
the only metric is it's easy to put on.
Yeah, I love shielding paint.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to put on, and I think it looks so neat. But it is messy.
Yeah, I've wondered if it's less effective, but
I think the problem with shielding paint is there's so many different companies, and some are rubbish. Like there's not much graphite in. Some are thicker, and it's really noticeable when I've used the different types, how it applies differently as well.
Yeah, it's expensive, and everyone I've had, it dries out before I finish it.
Right.
I've only ever used the copper tape, and I buy from Bunnings here the slug and snail one. And for me, it's about $10 for a roll, and I get maybe 2 or 3 cavities out of that. So it's I'm paying less than $5 a guitar to shield it with that tape, and it works. Yeah. Looks great. I haven't actually soldered the ground. Haven't thought of that before. A ground wire. So you're saying from the pot to the shielding.
Just to make sure. Yeah. I mean, you can literally just get a washer, on a screw, and just solder to the washer. And
I did one. Which guitar was it? One of the guitars. One that had a lot of wiring in it. I was kind of running out of spots on the back of pots to solder grounds to. So I did that. I put a screw in the side of the cavity and put a couple of wires off that, and that seemed to work okay as well.
And also, if you're shielding something like a Strat, the wire that goes from the main cavity to the jack cavity, change that wire, because that's your silly cloth wire, which is they persist in using. But I don't use cloth wire on anything, because I don't care if the wire looks vintage appropriate when it's inside a guitar. Right. And I don't make vintage copy stuff anyway. I don't go down that vintage correct route. So I value the function of the wire above the look of it, because it's wire. It doesn't really matter.
So what do you not like about the cloth wire? What's not good about the cloth wire?
It's not shielded.
Oh right, yes, simple as that.
It's just noisy.
I with the idea of soldering the pots to the shielding to make that ground connection, some guitars have, and I've started doing it, just that wire that comes down with a little metal loop that you screw in, and that metal loop makes the connection to it. But I never thought just soldering, because I wasn't using aluminium. I was using either aluminium or now the graphite paint. So yeah, if you're using the copper, then soldering makes sense to it. And I always have a little tab on my straps of the shielding that comes up over the edge of the cavity to make contact with the top or the back side of the pick guard, so it's all looped.
Absolutely. I usually use aluminium on the underside of the strap pick guard just because you can get it in bigger sheets.
Right.
And you can just put one sheet under it, and it's just easier. But
I've got to say,
shielding is good.
Yeah, I made a video ages ago, and it's one of my more popular ones where I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a strap, and I plugged it in, and I recorded the sound, and then I insulated it with foil, recorded the sound, and then I insulated it badly, and then insulated different bits. And it was not a very scientific experiment, but it was so obviously straight away that as soon as you put any shielding in, it made a difference. Even if that shielding wasn't properly connected up to each other, you could still hear a difference. And the amount of comments I get on that video about Faraday cages and this idea that you have to encase everything you've got in metal, make sure everything's linked together. It's just insane what some people are thinking, I think. Almost like you have to put the top of the pickups and the strings to make sure they're encased as well.
And you got a special tin foil thing on your head, just in case there's any, for cosmic background radiation. Yeah.
So
actually, we could because it's difficult, but we don't want to go on that road.
Yeah, I just want to interject again with I mention this every week, but I put together something called Luthier's Lunch Break, which is a compilation of short videos, and Glyn's been in a few of them. I'm about to edit the next one, so the current plan is the last Wednesday of every month a video will come out. About to edit the next one. I've got a video of Glyn's, but I can't remember which one it is because I haven't looked at it since before Christmas. And I've got a video of Curtis's, which he's just mentioned to remind you, Curtis from Goth Riders Creations, in which he shows us how to make insulation paint, shielding paint. So that's going to be in this one. So just on topic.
Cool. Oh, that'd be interesting. That's a great. Hey, well done, mate, for doing that. Do you ever sleep?
Well, that's why I'm going to doing it once a month, because it takes up so much time. And I was really hoping that it would be promoted more naturally for all the different people involved with it, but it's not really getting, it gets views when it comes out, and then it doesn't get future views, where it's not out of date. It can still be watched. So I need to find ways to keep promoting it, people to go back to it, if that makes sense. Because it doesn't have a title that's specific, like how to how to shield your guitar, or how to set up a Telecaster. People don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily come up when people are looking for it. So there's some things I can do to help with that, but I've got to go and do all of that, like putting chapters in and things like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, Glyn, we've done an hour and a half, which is normally when we try to finish. And I appreciate it's very early for you. Scott's got to go to work. Aaron probably wants to go to bed at some point.
That's all right.
Maybe
I'm going to sleep in the morning and then go to the beach, so don't worry about me.
All right.
Good on you, mate. Yeah.
But as we say often, it would be great to start having repeat guests. So it would be brilliant to come back, because I feel like we didn't talk about half the things I thought we might talk about, and we still talked about a lot. That was excellent.
Can I ask one quick question before we are sort of finishing up with covers on humbuckers? So with that one there, I like the chrome covers, but that's just purely for looks. Is a humbucker going to change much without a metal cover on it, and how much and what kind of effect, if any, does a cover have on a humbucker?
It does make a difference. The difference is pretty small.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it's better or worse with a cover sound-wise. Okay. So you and of course you can get really bogged down with what is a good sound, and then you need to go off and read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and figure out what quality means. But it's the high end is a little different with a cover. The quality of cover makes a difference. So if you've got a good quality, like the nickel silver cover, it is better. Yep. The adjusting the height of the pickup makes way more difference than if it's covered or not. So stick with your covers. On that subject, if you're going to put a cover on, you need a really good soldering iron to solder to it. And I think that's what soldering is all about, is having a really good iron It's nothing to do with any amazing skill anyone has. It's good gear.
That needs to be the start of our topics next time.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And really, I get those T12 soldering irons. I've got one. It was like 100 New Zealand dollars. I don't know what that is, and you can work that out. And it's the best soldering iron I've ever had. They're fantastic, and you can spend 5 times that, and and not get as good. So
one of the things for years I just had the cheapest ones I could find, and I got one of the Ryobi skins sort of range, but the variable temperature, that was the game changer for me for what I do. That when you're soldering on the back of a Strat, the trem claw, and you just need that bit of extra heat, you can dial up a little bit, and that's been helpful for me.
Those things are the test. Humbucker covers, Strat trem claws. Really, it's and if you've got one of those just soldering irons that plugs it in and isn't a solder station, one of those like you get from Bunnings cheap, you haven't got a hope. It really does. You can have any skill level you possibly like, and you will not successfully do anything with that. You won't go to the back of a pot or anything. It's just poo.
I need an upgrade.
Anyway, yeah. Hey, look, I'll send you a link to the one I'm talking about. It was recommended to me by a pedal maker, and I give it a go, and fantastic. So they heat up really quick.
So I've got a cheap piece of crap, and I didn't know it would make a difference, or
I ended up buying a Weller one on advice, and it seems good, but maybe it's not. Maybe I would get if I do what you're suggesting, Glyn, I might notice a massive jump in how good it is.
Yeah, I'm clearly really excited, and it's only a soldering iron,
Right, I'll tell you what. I'll get that link from Glyn, and I'll put it in the comments of this video. And also, while we're there, great segue here. In the description to this video, there's links to Glyn's website and social media like YouTube and Instagram. Like I've said, I love your videos, Glyn. I think they're brilliant, very educational stuff. We haven't really mentioned Jörg's Cup, but I'm halfway through editing some promotion for that. So I'm going to send that out to all the Guitar Builders Collective. And hopefully we'll get that out there. So everyone should be hearing more about that soon. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Glyn, and everyone that's in the chat and watching in the future. And we'll be live next week. I've forgotten who's coming on next week. That's terrible. Let me just double check that. Sorry.
You've got too many lined up. You've planned that far ahead. There's too many to remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So next week we've got Dan, who uses CNCs and also hand builds, and I think like this one, the CNC bit's a bit different to what we normally talk about. So it should be quite an interesting chat to see how he uses that to sort of augment the traditional building. Great. Okay. This time it's goodbye. Right. See you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.